Welcome to the Reality After Show covering MTV's The Challenge, Season 39, Battle for a New Champion, Episode 14 and Episode 15. Don't let TJ decide, and welcome to Conquest. I am your host, Alex Trias, as always joined by my ride or die, my partner that would never betray me while sipping for another person. It's Dan Montchal.
What's going on? No, excited to talk about these two episodes. I mean, we have the glorious return of CT and the elimination that everyone wanted, and then Conquest. Yay.
Yeah, so I think my favorite part of opening this is always Dan not knowing what thing I'm going to pull from the episode to describe him as.
You definitely have a plan with how you're gonna start, and I don't, and so that's why it's hit or miss. Sometimes I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, feel good with that. Others, it's like, all right, let's keep it moving now. It's like next up.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I'm in a house that still uses cable. I had DVR'd the CT episode. I was ready to watch it on Thursday, and I come back home and there are new cable boxes. And when you put new cable boxes in, it deletes your DVR. So I had to wait a little bit longer to watch the CD episode, but we got it now. So we have the end of Chaos and the beginning of Conquest. And I'll be honest, before I watched episode 15, I was going to be coming in here and saying, this season has really dragged for me. There's nothing happening. There's no excitement. There's no repercussions for actions in the game. And we get Chaos in episode 15, or the end of Chaos in episode 15, beginning of Conquest. And while the results aren't what I would have wanted, I enjoy the Conquest phase as a concept so much more than anything else they've done in this season. And it sort of reinvigorated some enthusiasm for the episodes for me. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Well, not only that, but it prioritizes winning. It makes winning as valuable as what daily should be. Because if you win a daily, I'm not saying that you should have necessarily the power of ride or dies where you're the sole, pretty much the sole factor of who's going in. Like, sure, you get put into a draw, but you're determining everything. So I don't think winning the daily should be you get sole control over everything. But it has to matter. It has to count for something, and there has to be incentive to want to go win. And with this type of format, we see that it's incentive not only for yourself to win, but someone in your alliance to win. Because if you don't, if you were in the minority alliance here, you maybe couldn't control exactly who goes in, but you can control that it's going to be two people from their alliance going in, which is what you need in order to shake up the game. So I do really enjoy that aspect of it.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing is, yes, the minority alliance gets screwed tonight. One by means that we will never know the truth about, but we'll get there because I know there's a lot of show me the numbers. But if we really want to be real with ourselves, if they weren't actually telling numbers and all that, do you really think production would have named the winner and the purger who they did? And the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're telling me they wouldn't boot Mariah, who's now only thing in the season is a 5-second clip of James Simps for me, and I love him, over Raven, who's been like a clear person that they are propping up as a future like mainstay on the show?
It's weird when it comes to Mariah because it's almost like within this season itself, production editing has done a complete 180. Because she came in, and sure, she wasn't necessarily Nerys or Olivia coming off of Ride or Dies where you saw, okay, there's this high ceiling that's here. But it was someone they were bringing back. They saw, hey, she could be a future mainstay. She comes in, she starts hooking up with James. She has this whole thing with, where they're intertwining the Bananas timeline. And they think, oh, they can turn that into something. You have champs that are continuously coming in and bringing it up to her. And you're thinking, okay, Mariah's really getting some juice. You're seeing a lot of her. But in the past, I don't know, 7 episodes now, it's if the fact that she wasn't somewhat associated with Bananas coming into the season, you wouldn't know she's there. This is her and James is the most boring showmance I've ever seen on the channel. Not ever, but in quite some time.
Yeah, and we'll get there, but I just had thoughts initially on that because I just recently watched 15. But we'll start back on episode 14. So don't let TJ decide. And we started the episode. They just come out of the elimination against Brad. Kylan wins again. A few things to note there is Colleen now thinks she's in an amazing spot because both sides thinks she has her, even though her whole thing that she was upset with Mariah about was that she felt Mariah was playing both sides. But now it's okay because she's the one playing both sides. At least she's accurate about, semi-accurate about playing both sides, even though the one side knows that they can't fuck with her anymore.
The funniest thing about Colleen moving into the game was at this point by not choosing a side in the Brad episode. So it's episode 13 and thinking, oh, she's in a really good spot. It was a really bad read, but how we're moving into Conquest, she's actually in a pretty good spot.
Oh yeah, no, she's now in a good spot because she's always going to be someone who's picked in the middle of the safety chain.
Yeah, like,
especially with how the daily went. There's like certain people that are always going to be saved now, and people are going to be like, "Why are you saving them over these other people?" And the reason is, well, we're not threatened by them, and end of the day, they keep picking the majority alliance to stick with. So it is what it is. Because like we get James here saying like he's never comfortable in the game. He knows his position in the game. And instead of trying to do something about his position in the game, he's like, well, Mariah is my brain. And Mariah is the only reason why I'm in this game. Which is true.
Yeah.
Cool, James.
Like I'd be shocked if we saw Colleen in an elimination. I think as long as you're saying that there's you're averaging somewhere between 8 and 10 people to a final, 6 and 10 depend. I think you're getting at least 8. And then
that requires.
I don't think she's seen elimination.
That requires her to both not get purged, like you said. It also requires in a world where Kylan or Horacio win, or Nerys or Olivia, what have you, whoever that last person is of the safety chain of them before they hand it over to the majority alliance, that's when you could potentially see Colleen get thrown into the bottom, because it's just the one, even like unless you pick Colleen, I think she's in the bottom, because I don't even think Berna would pick Colleen. Like
I think it depends how it goes with the the dual style of picking. I think that Emmanuel would take care of her, at least. Say what you will about he is, but I think that he's at least close with that clique that if Berna's picking, because I think Berna gets picked and then Berna picks Emmanuel, where in a lot of instances, and I think that's right. I think she's Emmanuel's pick.
I don't know. I think Emmanuel picks Michelle.
It's possible.
Because similar to Jay, Emmanuel's at least more self-aware that Michelle is a big reason why he was able to link up with this big group to begin with.
That's true. Like,
I'm sorry. I'm still on my pitch that we're getting the boring winner this year to just encapsulate what a dud of a season this is outside the few bright spots. Because like they throw Emmanuel in here for like no reason later in the episode to talk about like his game, and like there's no it has nothing to do with the plot of the show, the plot of the episode, nothing. It's just they just threw it in there of like how he's playing quieter and smarter than the rest.
I know you've been paying attention to the edit, and I've seen a lot of subtle things that would suggest that Emmanuel could be the winner. Maybe he is. I have no idea. How disappointing would it be? Because
it's very disappointing.
Up until episode 14, he had that, Colleen-esque run that she had in the beginning where you forget he's there.
His main thing that he had in the show was turning his back on Jordan.
Yeah, since the Jordan episode, have you noticed Emmanuel's been in the house? Like, sure, you may have seen that he's there, but he's not coming out of an episode since then. If you were, hey, name 5 people from last night's episode,
And
Emmanuel's
look,
never listed.
like to each their own. We know Emmanuel because he says it every single fucking tweet on Twitter is he's not there to entertain, he's just there to get the money. And if that's how he gets the money, cool. But then he should be treated like Jenny West.
Yeah, then I don't need to see you come back.
Like, I want to see Jenny West come back. She actually was in conflict with people when she was in the game, but they called her a boring winner, and then we've never seen her again. She's been booted as an alternate multiple times. If you're not there to provide entertainment for the show, why should the show keep bringing you back? Is my thing. That's all it is. Like, if you get your win, it's a well-deserved win because you got there and you won the final. Like, cool.
Mhm.
But as a viewer and someone who covers the show, it's hard to talk about how great of a win you had when we don't see your game, and that's sort of your point. So cool. Oh yeah, it's right here also. I just found it. Emmanuel low key. That's all I wrote in the notes.
He's there.
He is there.
He is a good physical competitor, but that's one of the things
for sure.
that drives me nuts with the challenge, because the challenge, it's, sure, it's a competition show, but first and foremost, it's a reality show that there's rules that you need to play. But if production wants to interfere something to make a better show, I don't necessarily hate it. Like, sure, you want everything to be fair, but a reality TV show is never going to be 100% fair. So when it comes to the challenge, this isn't like, Survivor or something where, it should be fair for all competitors. No, show me what's going to make the best plot for the show.
Exactly. And off of that, we sort of get twofold here because they like come back from the break, and it's the Soph and Jay. They're just two boys doing business. Master of ceremony. They have control of everything. Oh man, but
I'm just happy that in the next 45 minutes to an hour, I may not have to say a Soph's name again for quite some time, and that just makes me happy inside.
No, I'm sure Jay will still bring it up next week and every week.
Yeah, but it's
I don't have to say it.
Yeah, just ready for that ship to sail.
Yeah, I got you. And then we have Nerys apologizing to Kyland, and sort of like Olivia vouching for Nerys, saying like, yeah, like when I won, I had no voice. Like they essentially all went to me and said, Horacio's getting picked here. Kyland's going to be the house vote. And it really just re-emphasizes that Kyland and Horacio need to win in order to stay safe. If they don't win, they're going in. But now it at least looks like Olivia is like more on board with them, which at the end of episode 15, like I know there's some weird cut in episodes for the preview for episode 16. I still don't know why Nerys feels about Olivia the way that she feels about Olivia in real time.
Yeah, and you have to wonder exactly when they were pulling those confessionals, because we'll get there as when we get into episode 15. But suddenly you see the tea leaves for some of the things of coming like, oh, this is why they're not friends anymore. Like, because you can tell if you follow them just even a little on social media, they're no longer friends. And you at least now see the tea leaves, not the bullshit ones we were given for which by the way, I'm not sure if you heard the rumor, if you watched the clip that I sent you. I think it was from it was Zach Nichols' podcast from a few weeks ago.
Didn't have a chance.
It's when he had Scott Yeager on, and they were talking. And so going back to that clip from when Nerys was talking with her family, and she was warned by her brother, I believe it was, of, oh, Olivia's a snake, maybe you shouldn't trust her. Rumor and innuendo is where where Nerys's brother got that from, is from the Alex Trias favorite, Anissa, which makes no sense. I don't know why she's involved, but that's the rumor of where that came from, Anissa. Just gonna
This is
let
a
that
new
sit and
year.
just gonna let that sit and
This
marinate for a
in the
second.
year of 2024, I tried to say I would let certain grievances go. But you know it's a vice. Fuck Anissa. Fuck you. You can't just let other women be friends.
Well, no,
Fuck
I
off.
mean, it's all about her best friend, Tori Deal, who she famously hated her first few seasons. So, you know.
You know what, Scott? Thank you for that info. But also, Scott, please stop inviting Anissa to your Challenge Mania events. Please. But you know what? Or keep inviting her, because it means she won't be on the show.
That is true. They'll
So,
be filming 40 soon.
yeah, they are going to be filming 40 soon, and it's hard not to avoid the accounts that are showing who could and could not be there. But I'm not going to talk about it today. We'll save that for future pod stuff as more information comes out. So we have that moving forward. Jay is scared of a man elimination is coming up because obviously we just had 2 women and then a guy. But anyone can read that it's been 5 women eliminations, 4 men. So they have to even it up. It's going to be another man's day. So he's scared because it's obviously going to be a Bananas, a CT, a Wes, and all of these guys hate him. And I felt like they've been telegraphing this for so fucking long. That was more so why I thought it wasn't going to be Jay that gets picked, Dan. It was more so like they've been like hammering it over our head so much that I was like, no, well, the opposite. Something else will happen. And that's why I picked us off, because you hear it from CT's mouth. I'm like, they're going to pick us off because they know him the least.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, it could have won a different. I mean, I don't think CT makes the decision he does 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, but we can get into it more when he makes the
For
decision.
sure, for sure. It's a different CT. It's a different CT, and I also wouldn't be hard pressed to believe that production went to him like, just pick us off. We have a storyline going with Jay. If you pick us off, this is gonna be fucking hilarious seeing Jay implode like a little baby bitch.
So it's a rough stretch of episodes for Jay. It's very rough.
I'm not feeling sorry for him. He did it to himself. So Horacio scene does not mean anything. He did the long jump, folks. Cool. But essentially we still have Nerys, like the narrative of she's still trying to be loyal to Jay. She still sees Jay as a friend, not in real time. But at the time, she still sees Jay as a friend. She's still trying to figure out how to do this balancing act of not betraying them, but also staying loyal to Horacio and Kyland. And that leads us into the daily. And the daily is a mini final called Off in the Distance, where in random assigned teams of 4, each team has to grab a carry stick and race down a path where you have to hit 3 different checkpoints and you must complete them in order to grab 4 puzzle pieces and bring them back. And then once you bring them all back, complete your puzzle and you're safe. You win. Congrats. So the teams that we have are Turquoise, which is Emmanuel, Berna, Corey, and Raven. Yellow, which is Jay, Colleen, Nerys, and Ed. Orange, that's Kyland, Michelle, James, and Mariah, who just keep being picked as a group. Is this like the 3rd straight one?
Might as well. Mariah's the only voice for him, so what else is Shame supposed to do?
That's so true. They have to be together. Because also Mariah's sole mission is, well, I don't even care who's safe as long as it means James is safe.
Over it.
And like, they haven't, based off her words, even though I don't believe it, they haven't even fucked at this point.
I'm over it. I'm over the storyline.
And then there's Team Blue.
Back.
Then there's Team Blue of Olivia, Horacio, Zara, and Asaf. And in my mind, like going in, I thought until you knew what the checkpoints were, I'm like, okay, they have a very good shot of like doing very well. Like Olivia and Horacio as a duo, yes, they had a blow up in the mini final last year, but they're two good competitors. They know each other. They're strong. Zara is strong. And whatever you want to say about Asaf, outside of math, he isn't a bad competitor.
No,
So
he's
you
not.
can't say I haven't said good things about Asaf, because to be real, there are positives to Asaf. And I'm curious of seeing a world where Asaf came back, but not with Jay, and having to actually put in real work into a show, because I've seen social media since his boot. Like there are people that even that were against him that were like, there's one thing you can't say is that like Asaf isn't like a good, like they had good relationships with him. And so there's potential there, even though it was aggravating to see him in a power position in this season.
Well, I think it's not now Asaf, his main connection here. It's obviously Jay,
His
but I
Uncle
think,
Jay.
but I think you could say for almost everyone in that majority alliance that it's Michelle who's protected them. Like if they didn't have the Michelle commonality like bond there, and she didn't kind of say, "Hey, this is the group that we're riding with," so many of these people in the season, they're screwed if they come back, because if they don't have that someone who can not only protect them but also give them an alliance that they don't need to go out and form organically, I don't know if half of them can do it.
Yeah, and also to the challenge alumni that always put a target on Survivor's back because you think that they're just the masters. There's a big difference in not all survivors are the same. And you can see that with how Michelle maneuvers through a game of the challenge and was able to win Survivor, versus Jay, who you see how he navigates a season of the challenge and he didn't win Survivor. And you can sort of see why.
Yeah, I'll save it for later. We'll get there.
Okay.
Go on.
So we go into this. I'm just going to list what the 3 checkpoints are. So the first checkpoint that everyone gets to is, there's 16 bags dangling on a rope with a saw edge at the top. You have to maneuver the rope to saw the rope off of the platform to retrieve your puzzle piece. Once all 4 people do that, you can bring your puzzle pieces back. Checkpoint 2 is maneuvering it through like this rope course, like sort of like something you would see at one of those like company like trust exercise like days. Like if you go out to like a campsite or whatever, it's like one of those like, here are these puzzles that you guys can work together as a group. Like that one didn't look that hard. It was just making sure you stay in the course. And then checkpoint 3, which was actually the fun one, was counting a bunch of squares and then multiplying it by 39 to find a combination to unlock your puzzle pieces.
I know he's not, some of the blowback he's gotten, he's not the most popular person and people don't want to necessarily see him back. I would have loved to see Nelson try to figure out this puzzle.
I would have loved seeing Corey in this, because I just remember Invasion of the Champions. How many triangles?
Oh, him and Nicole. It was beautiful how bad they were.
Well, we're not going to talk about Nicole on this podcast. all I'll say about that is go on to Instagram and watch Laurel read her for filth.
Yeah, it's out there. You can find
it's out there.
If you're not sure what we're talking about, you can find it very quickly with but
very
a quick search.
All you have to say is Team Laurel, and we're moving on. Okay, so with these checkpoints, the blue team of Olivia, Horacio, Zara, and Asaf have like a very strong lead. Maybe because Asaf, if the challenge doesn't work out, he can always lead a orchestra. He's a conductor,
sure.
Master of ceremony.
Hey, I would much rather him lead an orchestra than him try to create his own shitty music. So that's fine with me. If he wants to take up being a conductor, I'm fine with that.
Okay, everyone, here's your middle school rap made by 2 mid-30-year-olds.
Yeah, no, just go be a high school band instructor. I'm fine with that. That seems like a great career path.
He probably would be good at that.
It was only said with slight snark, so that's fine.
Yeah, He has to do it for his kid.
No
But don't
comment.
talk about his mom. Don't
No
talk
comment.
about his mom.
No comment.
Yeah, but so like they get a very strong lead, but the part that breaks them is, which sort of foreshadowing for Asaf, is the math. They get stumped by the math because they actually try to count the squares. And they don't know the difference between squares and rectangles, all that stuff. Like squares can be rectangles, rectangles can't be squares, type of thing. So they're struggling. They end up losing all of their lead. They're the last one to complete the lock combination. I'll give credit to the yellow team. So that's Jay, Colleen, Nerys, and Ed. So
Big credit to Ed.
Big credit to Ed and Jay. I'll give them both the idea of instead of wasting time trying to count squares, they were like, okay, just multiply 39 by 20 and then work up from there. And just spend your time just doing the combination, because eventually you'll get it right instead of wasting so much time to do a math problem, get it wrong, and then going back to a sign and trying to figure out the one or two that off that you were, when you could just be constantly just upping it by 39, upping it by 39.
It's the right strategy. Quick side note, the one thing, going back to Jay, is I don't know if I've just been blinded by, turning from, I can't stand this dude anymore. But he mentions it several times of being like, oh, his second mini final win. And apparently for about a week and a half, I just blacked out Double Agents because that is where he got his first one. But he kept saying it. I was like, no, you didn't. You were gone by the time we got to the mini final last season.
Yeah,
and
because
it wasn't
Ryder Dies, it was Mariah and Fessy.
Yeah. So it wasn't
Vessel,
until I don't know, 4 days ago, when I don't know why I was still thinking about it, where I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Jay did win it with Teresa and Double Agents. I blacked that out apparently.
So credit to him and Ed and Nerys for like sticking with Colleen. But like Colleen, I was like very shocked by her essentially like gassing out on the first task, because like I don't think that's indicative of what she'll do in a final. It's a weird, like just random thing that typically isn't something we're going to see in in an actual final. Is that specific thing of sawing off a rope, but it definitely put something in people's heads where I feel like they put her in a similar box as James, of like, okay, some of us were afraid of you in the final. We're not anymore. You tied yourself there. You seemed gassed out for the other legs of the run. We're not scared of you.
If I'm in that majority alliance, I'm trying to figure out how I can get to the final with James and Colleen.
Yeah, for sure.
Just based off of that, because I get that she was, very and her arms were probably exhausted for how many times she had to swing the bag back and forth.
And she's a small person. Like, she isn't like this big defined muscle girl. Like, she's in shape, but she's smaller. But then you go like, but Zara was able to do it with ease.
Yeah, it was more, and I get that, sure, you're still tiring yourself out swinging that back and forth, but dying that much on the run and them literally saying, okay, like sit, drink some water and take a second while we take the bag the rest of the way. Like once they got to the checkpoint area, that's not a good look.
It's not. I'll briefly touch on Turquoise because they were just always just middle of the road. So Manuel, Berna, Corey, and Raven, they were there. I love Raven just like without even looking at anything, just says the answer is 225, and Corey had to explain to her that doesn't even make sense. Like, if there's at least 10 squares, it has to be over 390, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you're right." I don't even care. I love that she was just so damn confident.
I mean, sometimes confidence is key. Maybe not in math, but other areas of life.
And hey, the last thing I can do at this point is knock challengers on math when it's just historically known. Unless I guess you're engineer Ed, you're not good at math.
of everyone who's been at the challenge, it's greater than 50% of them are terrible at math. So that's
I mean,
it's not a
there's a
huge knock.
reason why. I honestly think with someone like CT, I think he struggles with the math ones only because they don't use the actual math rules for how to do an equation, and they literally will just be like, you start at the beginning and you go all the way to the end. You ignore all proper math rules, and you're just like, oh, just follow the line as if you're reading a book.
Oh, who the hell needs order of operations? All right. It's not important. Never needed you. Never wanted you. Beat it.
See, I just want to see them break their brains and add an exponent.
That's way too complicated for
I
a
just
challenge.
all I want to see is them put a squared in and see how many people's brains break.
All right. So many people struggled with the concept of a prime number. You can't be adding in fancy stuff like squaring numbers.
I know, but there's just a part of me that's like, you put an absolute value and all of them not knowing what an absolute means. It's just like seeing their mind explode in real time would be such great TV. It'd be better than watching them puke. I just want to literally see the steam coming out of their ears because their brain is on overdrive.
Well, challenge 43 when we bring back all non-champs again. Like, we'll pitch the idea.
TJ, I know you're not listening, but hopefully a producer or an intern is. Put this in the book. It would make TJ laugh. I know it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because he'll pretend that he understands it.
Yeah, he has the answers. Like, come on.
Yeah.
It's easy when you're reading backwards.
But so this is the story of the orange team, though, which, we make fun of James because the whole thing is he can't run a final. But at least in this group setting, we didn't see him gas out in this specific mini final.
No, it was
big difference in an actual final because I think he would have gassed out in the elimination from episode 15. But Kylan, Michelle, James, and Mariah actually do a good job. Like they were in third place for a majority of the time, but the big difference was once you got all the puzzle pieces and you got back, like it was between them and the yellow team for what I wrote in my notes as the Michelle Survivor puzzle. The Michelle puzzle special specifically in my notes, where it's all the columns. You have to create a bunch of columns that are of differing heights, but when put together can create 4 equal columns. And who doesn't love a false celebration just to find out you're wrong?
Especially coming from Jay here. Like that
like
was
Jay
the cherry
is literally
on top.
Showboating. He's like, I think he's about to go in full, like, for a Big Brother reference. There's this old guy from Big Brother 10, topical because Dan Giesling's on the Traitors, who after his group wins starts pointing and yelling at the other side, yelling, "You're going home!" After winning.
It was a mixture of that and also just like Turbo's weird like karate shit of like just kicking stuff whenever it was over, kicking the relics.
Yeah. But they're wrong. And it's because there was like one little slightly off, but because they can't really tell, it's impossible for them to figure out. Whereas Michelle and Kylan are just like, everyone just be calm. It's this. We got it. And they are the winners. So orange team wins. This allows Kylan at least to be safe. But we find out it's a guys' night as it was pretty damn obvious. And essentially Michelle, Mariah, and James are just like, it's Horacio. James is becoming insufferable to me again because now he's just like, even in a power position, he's just going to do what Mariah wants. And then he has to bullshit to himself that it's a good idea just because he has to go to Kylan and be like, well, you see, we all want to win the final, right? And Horacio is the best person that's going to win the final. So neither of us want to compete against him. And in Kylan's back of his mind, it's like, I don't mind competing against him. But Kylan understands his position. And more importantly, Kylan's like, well, if Horacio's already thrown in, that only leaves the other side to have to vote amongst each other. So I'm not even going to mention another name, which is very smart Because some people are going to be like, oh, I'm so shocked that Kylan didn't back up Horacio. But at this point in the season, if you're shocked that Kylan can't win a 3-versus-1 situation, you're delusional, as Zara says later on. But Horacio's the vote. And now it's, who is it going to be? Who's the other side? And for everyone at home, we all knew who it was going to be between. It was going to be between Ed and Emmanuel. The two people in the middle. So
I was a little shocked. I was a little shocked that Corey wasn't getting any consideration, but it does just show how well he has recovered from his beginning screw ups. So say what you want about Corey, whether you like him or not, he has recovered very well from being in hot water early in the season, especially once your name is already out there. That's such an easy way to say, well, Corey's name was out there before, we're going to vote it again. So it does truly speak to his social game. Not just, it's obviously help from Michelle because Michelle's vouching for him, but you can see that he's actually put in that extra work outside of Michelle got me in the door. Now I'm going to make sure that I'm far enough in the door that I can't be pushed back out.
Right. And so this dynamic is very interesting because it shows like us getting to know more than the players themselves. Because you have Kylan's side of the house is planning to target Emmanuel for two reasons. One, they perceive Emmanuel to be, like, outside of Michelle, Jay's closest ally. His number one, his number two. So it's a big push against Jay. And they think they can get more traction against an Emmanuel rather than a Jay. And then two, they see him as a solid competitor. They see if he's at a final, he could do really well. Which is why, with the Ed decision later on, that online was roasting him for, you can't blame him for wanting to go after Horacio and Kylan because they are his competition. And while it may make sense in some worlds for him to align with that, because you see what happens in this episode in a world where Horacio and Kylan are not on the table, it's going to be him because people see him as a big threat competitively in this game. So Michelle wants to protect Emmanuel. And so the votes are supposed to go. She's looking for 7 votes to be put on Ed. Then they know there's going to be 5 votes that get thrown towards Emmanuel. But in those votes, they're also counting Olivia.
Yeah. Well, and what it also shows is as much as, Jay wants to talk and say that, oh, he's thinking, I think he says it in 15, that he's thinking, strategically, not emotional.
No, he's playing the game.
Yeah,
there's no emotion behind it.
And it's that's bullshit. But B, this shows that I'd say Kylan and Horacio, mostly Kylan, because Kylan is the brains for most of this, that side of the alliance, is he truly is playing the game logical with no emotion, because for everything that Jay has done to him, that would be the name that you could see, hey, that's who he wants to throw out and rally behind. But he knows that if he's going to get the votes on his side, he still can't ask Nerys to throw in Jay at this point. It's something he can't do. So it's smart knowing, hey, I can get people to go after Emmanuel because they don't have those direct ties to him. And B, of the two, Emmanuel's the bigger final threat.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you do have to go at the big competitors on the other side. Just out of pure interest, the point of the game, because not only are you taking someone who could win in the final, you're picking someone that could potentially win dailies. And as we see in episode 15, that's going to matter above everything else, is who's able to win that daily, because that's going to dictate which side is going in.
Absolutely.
100% of the time. So only note from the club I'm just going to mention is Horacio just like clocking Michelle for shit. And I was not expecting it from him. And just him going to confessional and throwing so much shade of like, now I sort of understand why the vets have such an issue with Jay and Michelle, I guess, as well, which really more so Jay than Michelle. Like, Michelle has her mainly just Laurel. Like, there aren't a lot of people that aren't good with Michelle. But like, we see the postseason. We see the people that Michelle hangs out with. Like, Michelle is good with bananas. And if you're good with bananas, then you're going to be good with a lot of these other vets as well.
You're
Laurel
good
just
with
has a
bananas,
vendetta.
yeah, and like Tori, because Tori's really what
Yeah.
stirs the drink with that vacation alliance. But
And
no,
Devin. She's good friends with Devin as well.
I thought it was or I loved Horacio's comment, but I thought it was Jay who was the most indicative of just saying, hey,
Yeah.
I now see why all these people don't like you. Like, it makes sense. And as we've talked about before, it's just Jay, all this stuff for you as a competitor. I hope it works out well for you again, because this is your first time making it past the halfway point. I am not crazy like everyone else being like, oh, I never want to see him on the challenge again. He's been enough of the focal point, especially as we keep going, that he is going to be back at some point. I'd be shocked if he ever made it to the halfway point again.
Yeah. So here's a funny thing there about Jay, because we briefly see before the vote it takes place, we know it's still going to be between Ed and Emmanuel. We see this thing about Michelle and Mariah feeling that Olivia's playing both sides. And I guess this is sort of where we're starting to see this thing for why Mariah has beef with Olivia, is just because Olivia, I guess, hasn't prioritized that relationship while they've been in the game, and has been saving. They sort of feel like, why are you biting the hand that feeds you type of thing. But overall, Michelle is starting to see and verbalizing how Jay's actions and words in this game keep impacting her because of their known relationship. So
that
it's
was
just a thread that we need to see.
Well, that was part of it from your note at the club. I didn't watch all of it, but I watched part of Narice's. She went live after episode
I
15.
missed that.
And I checked in and out. Like, they went on forever. And because she had Horacio on for a while, then she had Raven on.
Well, Horacio's back.
Yeah.
He's back from his 9-month venture.
And then it was Michelle. And then I think they even had Melissa on for a little bit. I didn't catch any of that. But it was something that Michelle had mentioned when they were talking about it, was she didn't realize necessarily how clear people like Jay had drawn that line for Horacio until it was too late. So that it wasn't that she had anything necessarily going after Horacio there, but because Jay made that line clear, and it goes back to your associating the two of them as a pair, that Jay essentially made that decision for her.
Right. Yeah, I don't feel like Horacio, if they were on another season together, I feel like Horacio would feel a type of way about Michelle, but I think he'd be more open to working together in the game. Like, because there's also rumors here that Narice isn't going to, or she declined season 40. But if Horacio says yes, which there's no guarantee that he does, just because he might want a break after just spending like 5 months on a show and not winning, I believe. I think he was like eliminated just at the very end of it. I could see openings there, because Olivia is on the list, and so is Michelle so far, of like the small list of people that are like suspected to be on the show. As well as some other surprises. So like, if you guys aren't afraid of spoilers, it's out there. You can find it. But just some interesting names there. But anyway,
Melinda, hell yeah. Sorry, go
on. Melinda's back, and I'm happy about that. Anyway, we had the vote. I'm gonna sort of summarize it. We got a tie. We got 6 votes not Jay. 6 votes Ed, 6 votes Emmanuel. So you sort of have the minority group of Kylan can't vote. So it's Narice, Horacio,
Olivia,
Zara, Raven,
and Olivia's the last vote.
Olivia and Ed, obviously.
Yeah.
All vote Emmanuel. The rest vote for Ed, which should have been like, Ed's smart, guys. Like, he's not dumb. You may call him dumb because he ends up folding back into the group, but it's the game that he's playing, and it's very similar to Emmanuel, except that Ed's also just showing out in the competitions. He's trying to make the least amount of waves as possible each round. He's playing like a social game, even though it's not like a good social game by our metrics, but it's one of like the path of least resistance, which is why people call it a scared game. It's because he's trying to make the least amount of waves, that because in his mind, by not making waves, you should just keep moving forward. But my issue with that logic is this is now the second time where when a line needed to be shown of what is the hierarchy, it's you at the bottom when it comes to the guys. It's not Corey. It's not Sa. It's not Jay for sure. And everyone realizes that it's not Jay. Like, it's you. So at what point do you keep trying to do this path of least resistance? Or when you do have power now, and these people just sort of threw you away, why not take a shot? It's, I think, the frustration that people have. While, yes, you want to get rid of your strong competitors so that if you do get to the end, you sort of feel like you're going to win it outright. But you have to get there. And if he doesn't get there, and he's eliminated through some metric of whether a purge or an elimination before the final, you can fall back to episode 15 for why does Ed lose this game?
It's very true.
Yeah. But give Ed his credit here, because we then go into a revote and Corey gets skittish and puts a vote on himself thinking if everyone else votes the same, Emmanuel will go in. And there won't be a tie. We won't find out the repercussions. And Ed is the last vote, realizes the situation that he's in, and he's just like, okay, I'm going to throw my vote too. Let's see what happens.
Well,
y'all tried to fuck me over. I'm going to fuck everyone over.
Well, because it's just, what does Ed have to lose? Sure, you could say he's still vulnerable, like,
yeah.
But you always know if someone pulls the chaos, you're never truly safe if you didn't win. And it is smart going into it because it's like, hey, this has turned into Ed versus Emmanuel. But if you're Ed, you're like, I really have no beef with Emmanuel. He's done both seasons. Mm-hmm. We've been working well this entire time. So if I'm going to, make lines and distinctive, it's not on the other side of Emmanuel. So
yeah,
I completely get why he does it.
Yeah, he does it. And I think there's other reasons that aren't shown. And it's like, one is we also seen on his Instagram, he considers himself the best competitor on the cast. Emmanuel second, and then Horacio and Kylan third and fourth. But we can debate about that. We're not on this podcast. But for his perspective,
we don't need a debate about it. He's wrong, but
he is wrong.
I accept his
but I don't want to say wrong in the sense of like, oh, he's Bush League, because he is a strong competitor. But Horacio and Kylan have been able to show more to us throughout the course of the season that prove that they're top tier.
Absolutely.
But I think in his mind, he's like, well, if a champion's purpose down there is to take someone out and win money, if they have the choice of picking anyone, they're not going to pick me. And if you're spending all of this phase with Jay constantly saying, oh, if it's any of these like 500 people, they're all picking me. Okay, that name doesn't sound like it's Ed. So let's tempt fate. I'm not gonna just like because I think Ed's someone who's, if I get thrown in, sure, whatever. Like if it was a majority vote on him, I think he would have voted himself. But because it was a close vote, it allowed him to be like, okay, let's see what happens. So he causes the stalemate. But what's very funny about this, Dan, is the people that caused the stalemate are Corey and Ed. However, apparently, it is only the fault of women, according to Jay.
Well, what's crazy, going back, full circle of hypocrisy right there, is sure, like they make this, they don't realize that CT is going to call out a Sa. You could think that, oh, he may call they don't know it's CT. So you could think, okay, it puts them up for elimination. But we're just 3 episodes removed of Jay having the comment of being like, well, sure, I'm going to take out her number 2, but really I have her best interest in the game. At what point does Nerys have Ed, or especially Emmanuel, as a number? Because she doesn't. They're linked together through the alliance, but she isn't a number, or sorry, he isn't a number for her. So why would
she's not a number for him?
Yeah, why would she stick her neck out solely to do that if she knows it's going to protect Kyland and Horacio and Jay more. It makes no sense.
Right. So he decides it's perfect to blame Nerys and Olivia for the stalemate, even though, how about you buck up to the boys? Because the trend that I'm seeing is he's only okay with, I'm not going to use the word yell, but scolding and belittling and gaslighting the women. And the only guy that he'll buck up to is Kyland, and that's only in a situation where there's a freaking kitchen barrier between them and everyone's around.
It's false bravado is all that it is.
Like, I'm sorry, it's bitch energy. Like, it's just he is acting like a little bitch.
When we get into his blow up of 15, I have a few more little nuggets for you, but we'll wait till then.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so let's go through because like Michelle also scolds them, and I feel like Michelle, I wish, would listen back to the episode and be like, you know what you're saying when you're telling Nerys and Olivia that Jay is all of our number one? That's not how a number one works.
Yeah, how does that work? That doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't work. Nerys doesn't.
Especially if you're right there and go, I mean, if I was Nerys, and maybe she does at some point or whatever, but if she's really trying to kind of solidify herself with Kyland and Horacio, but then also pull Olivia over more, why doesn't she just, I don't know, Olivia, you're not in the Fantastic Four, so really, how important are you?
That's such a great point. We don't see the blow up of the Fantastic Four. And I love that Jay's like, while he's bitching and moaning about it, he's like, they just asked me what airport am I going out of? And I wish we got the answer. I want to know what airport you're using.
What a tool.
It's a big question though. Like is he a Spirit Airlines person?
I wouldn't be surprised. He has Spirit Frontier written all over him.
Anyway, that gets us to elimination. We do have TJ with the classic scolding of, you don't want the power in my hand, so I'm going to give it to this guy instead. And we see CT already with the maze. There is no platform out there to pull. He just automatically gets to have chaos. CT, 19 seasons, 10 finals, 5 championships, and yes, 5 people. The spinoffs don't count. Stop trying to count them. You look ridiculous. Like, CT doesn't need that to prop up how great of a competitor and being one of the GOATs. Like, no. He's there. So CT sees Horacio by himself down there, and he's like, you remind me of myself early on in my challenge career. I was the one that would get thrown in near the end all the time because people didn't want me in there by whatever means. Half of them DQs. I didn't get the chance that you got.
To be fair, when he was DQ'd, it was generally in episode 1, but you know.
Well, there's also the carabiner.
All right, that was in the duel. That was later. Yeah, that was
even
later.
Though he literally whooped Brad's ass in that. But I'm gonna give you what they didn't give me, kiddo, and you're gonna be safe.
It was a nice father-son moment.
I know. Like CT's like fully embraced just being dad CT to all these people now.
I think, if you want more of Jay sucks, is him going is you do see the nice, like, Jay, like, you beat me, but you beat me straight up. I have nothing to go. And as much as, I wouldn't even say it's shit, but as much as Jay, it's kind of shit talking related of always bringing up how he beat CT or whatever, him just with his tail between his legs at this point, like, thank you, sir. Like, thank you. Like, shut the fuck up.
He's a little bitch. Like, it's established. But so he says, look, I ain't gonna cut it or like dance around it. Asaf, I know you're the least. Asaf, come down here. And you know what? Asaf at least took it like a man. Like, because the one thing that everyone does back up is that Asaf wasn't ever like afraid of being down there. Like, if he could avoid being down in elimination, perfect. But like, he wasn't going to miss out on an opportunity to like go against the best. Because like, say he beats CT in whatever the elimination is, That's a big thing you can put on your board because look at what Jay does. Jay keeps the only thing Jay can hold on to is like, I beat up a broken down CT and a comp that also caused CT to become a back-to-back winner after.
Yeah, it's Asaf he's been constant. Now, I still think he's full of shit, like going back to the Jordan episode where he's just like, I would have loved to compete against you. No, you
I think he
wouldn't.
would have. I think he would have liked to compete against him.
He wouldn't have liked going home that early.
No, that's the difference. That's the difference. So the elimination is mind grind. There's a 250-pound wheel that you have to go around in a circle with some like little obstacle things around it, and then once you finish, put it right up where you'll see a math equation. Some math numbers will come out, and using only prime numbers, solve the equation. Asaf doesn't know prime numbers. CT wins. Also, prior to the elimination, Nerys goes to give Jay a hug because they are friends outside of this game, and Jay literally pushes her away, saying like, "No, I don't want that shit." Which, dude, if you couldn't give more of looking like just a complete and utter baby on this show, like, what are you right now? Like, you are, it's like so small, like so small. And it's like, and again, he's only doing it to the women because he knows they won't buck up to him.
Well, Nerys will.
Well, Nerys will clap back. She won't. She's gone through anger management, remember?
Yeah.
She's good.
What I will add in about the elimination is apparently they had to change it because the first equation, they were out there for like 2 hours. Like it was incredibly difficult. They couldn't figure it out. Then, so what we're seeing is the second form of the equation. And apparently with this, Ed had figured it all out, but they weren't letting him do the entire math equation for Asaf. And so, because apparently, I think Ed talked about it because he was with Zach Nichols, I think last week. And he said that they wouldn't let him talk once they did the reset. Like that was the thing is we'll give you the dumbed down equation, but you're not getting any help from the outside.
Which they shouldn't. Like, this is a type of competition where I'm like, no, you live or die by knowing the basics of math. Like, because that was the most annoying thing to listen to was him yelling out to everyone every single fucking number that he had. And I'm like, dude, I thought you were so ready for the challenge. I thought you were ready for this.
Imagine if he had a
are you really going to hold beating CT in a brains competition by saying, oh, I beat him with 15 other people helping me?
No,
well, not really 15 because Horacio and Kylan were definitely not helping.
He'd be insufferable. It's all he'd talk about, and I'd hate it. So,
like, the only thing Kylan would do is say, like, that's not a prime number. It's like 4? No.
Could we
not a prime number?
Could we bring Devin in just to talk shit on the side, like
with a broken wet cigarette?
Yeah, but I mean, he's famously yelled at Josh about math. Like, just have him in just to talk shit.
We will have heard plenty from Devin there, but Asaf loses. CT wins, and CT tries to remind them, like, hey, like, this game can be a pressure cooker, but remember to have fun. Pan over to Jay, who's crying like a little bitch, and like in pure tantrum, like could not hide it any clearer. And this awakens Kylan's mind of like, oh, this was better than taking out Manuel. Like, look how many people are crying over Asaf going.
Yeah, it's whatever.
So yeah, overall,
goodbye, Asaf. Please never come back to my screen.
Overall, we don't need to talk more about this, but I feel the champions was a letdown, mainly because the eliminations were not fun. They weren't entertaining. There's nothing entertaining of having CT there and going, CT, stand there and look at numbers. Like, I'm not asking for a hall brawl with CT. Like, that's not even his thing. He's never done a hall brawl. But like, there's so many other things you could put in for CT to do other than here's a math equation, solve it. Well, push a 250-pound thing.
But
Cool.
what as we come back, like, especially as we get further away from the season, we start moving into future seasons as time goes on, and you think, oh yeah, battle for a new champion. What eliminations are you going to think of? Like, because I think you could say that the most memorable was the
15.
Jordan one. Well, yeah, well, sure. I was talking just to the champs there, but you'll remember that. Okay, like Jordan kind of won that because you had some Jordan antics and there was some
Oh yeah,
controversy and yada yada yada. But all
Jordan,
the
you
other
you made
champs
you
since
made
then,
Kieran cry on camera for beating him. You won't remember Kaz's. Casey, at least you remember that it was the only physical one. You remember Kylan beating Brad's ass, but like
like
it's not a
you're not going to remember Tori beating Melissa in a fish
no.
tank. Like
You're not gonna remember Devin beating Callum in counting stuff in a box.
you're not going to remember Darrell's weird janky carnival game. Like you're
Yeah,
just
it's
not.
so in my mind, it was failed. It's a failed opportunity. Like, congrats for getting your paydays to the champions. It's not your decision what the theme was, but it was a flop for me. But we're an hour in. I'm moving on. Episode 15.
Whoa, one more. Sorry, just kidding. Go on.
Jay is pissed that his number one is gone, and let's talk some shit. Because he takes Kylan laughing, which in the scene that they show, Kylan's not even laughing, and is being Jay is being a little bitch and going like, Asaf has a family. He has a son and a wife. I'm like, okay, where was that energy for Melissa?
And so I did see Kylan talking about it, and he did say that him and Horacio were talking, but they're like, while everyone was saying their goodbyes and doing all of this, like they were talking about the game, other stuff. He's like, we weren't talking anything to do with the Asaf, which I have no reason to believe, like to not believe him. So
Kylan doesn't have a reason to lie.
yeah.
Yeah. But like, I just fuck off about the family. Okay? Like, everyone has a family. Everyone has a family. Maybe not everyone has children, but like everyone has significant people in their lives. I don't care. What, because Asaf has a baby boy, he has to have a free ride to the final? Just be happy CT didn't pick you. And remember the people that actually caused the tie. It wasn't Nerys. It wasn't Olivia. Yeah, they voted against you. Ed caused the tie. Corey caused the tie. Like, this is on you for not being able to maneuver these relationships and think that you're the mastermind when really it's Michelle.
It's what makes it even...
and let's talk about the, well, if it gets physical, it gets physical while you're hiding in the corner of the kitchen. And Kylan, who is not being he's confrontational with his words. Kylan has never shown in this season that he's gonna pop off on you.
I just don't understand where Jay's like, if it gets physical, it gets physical. It's just like, I'm not saying he couldn't win a fight, but outside of, you're just taking people from the challenge, outside of like Mike, who was Leroy's, rival / friend, who are you picking that Jay's going to beat that ass?
The other Jay. Maybe.
That works. Maybe.
I don't know what he looks like now.
It'd be
apparently he's on All Stars 4, but
it'd be some weird greasy fight. But yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, but essentially, he spends this whole time like blaming Horacio and Kylan for Asaf going home. Which again, they didn't target Asaf; they targeted Emmanuel,
who isn't a number for him.
And CT called out Asaf when he could have called you out. And so, whatever.
My biggest...
I love. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, another huge issue I have with Jay is it's his continued on antics. Because apparently, after episode 15 aired, Michelle said that like she reached out to Jay and was just like, as a friend, being like, "How are you doing? Are you okay?" And he's just there being like, "Oh, I love it. I love the hate." And it's like, once again, Jay, you're full of shit. Because if you look at his Instagram, he's trying to do like fun, like cute videos or whatever. And if you were really embracing being the heel, you wouldn't try and clap back at every single person that comments on your Instagram post. The fact that you're going back and you're commenting on 90% of the people that, don't have profile pictures, you are truly so bothered and distraught right now, which good, you fucking deserve it.
He thinks this is one way of staying relevant so that he does get a call back, because I don't think production's happy with him at this point in the season.
No, and if you're gonna go and try to turn and be that heel, you have to own it. If that's what you are, make your posts and go out there on social media just steering into the curve. But he's not.
In this episode, he does make a villain move of forcing a quote unquote friend to choose between her best friend and her new boyfriend. And all that stuff. A true villain move. Him not giving a shit anymore. Be like, I'm gonna do something. I'm the bad guy. But you know how it's this whole thing of everyone's Bananas is only relevant because he stole Kevin or not
Sarah's.
Kevin. Kenny's.
Oh,
he stole Kenny's gimmick. They're Bananas took Kenny's personality after Kenny was no longer allowed to be on the challenge, and then that's how he became the personality that he is. And I almost feel like in this world, in that theory, Jay is copying Bananas, copying Kenny.
But it's also just
But it's not authentic.
It's not authentic. The other thing that's really weird about it is if you're going to make these true villainous moves, be smart like Sarah Rice. Where Sarah Rice, she she made the move against Bananas. But when did she do it? She did it at a time to get him out right before the final. And she also knew who her competition was, that was her biggest competition. Jay is doing all this, and it's just, sure, I don't see how he doesn't get to the final at this point. I don't think he can win. Not saying that he can't, but if you're saying that, who can Jay beat? If I'm just picking, stereotypical final of what we tend to think of, in his alliance, I don't think there are 5 other people that are currently on the show that he can beat in a final. I just don't think there are.
And I think he's underestimating others.
Yeah, so he's doing all this moves or whatever. He's creating all this waves, all this hate, and it's helping him get further in the game, but none of it's helping him win. He can't beat Emmanuel in a final. I don't think he can beat Ed in a final.
And it goes
Corey,
back to
he might have to beat.
And it's what we've been saying earlier in the season is, if I'm Jay, I'm praying I won this season. Because you heard it from Josh a couple seasons back, of all people. And it's you're playing the season in front of you, but this is what you're planning to be your not even your main source of income, but your main thing of reality fame and all that.
Your occupation.
You have to play forward. You have to play with what can I do in this season, ramifications wise, that won't hideously impact me in any other future season moving forward.
Yeah,
he's only made his position worse than it was before, in my opinion, in a season starting at season 40 where veterans and people that are on All-Stars and whatnot are allowed to come back into the game on a cast.
Yeah, he hasn't, because I get that there's a ton of hate out there. Play to win the season, which I understand that.
Yeah,
but it's also
but play the win forward.
Yeah, if this is your goal moving forward, that you're treating this as your job, sure, you want to advance yourself in the current season, but not if it's going to cut your legs out in every future season. You know who can afford to play that way? Someone like a Danny McRae, who I believe really has no interest in coming back. If you know you're not coming back, sure, play as dirty and cutthroat as you want. Or you think like Leroy, where he knew it was going to be his last season. Spoiler, it isn't. But at that time, that was his thought. Okay, you can get away with playing that way where you're not worried about ramifications in future seasons. Sure, do whatever you have to do to win. But if you're Jay, you know that he wants to keep coming back and doing the challenge. He loves it. You have to think about future consequences as well. And sure, you're going to burn some bridges. Don't burn them all.
Yeah, because so Kylan goes to Michelle, Mariah and Corey are also in the room. And I love that he sort of just goes over to them. It's like, sort of tells like her, like, hey, control your man. He's wilding out there. And like, I think he needs some like emotional support. And it's like, even Kylan, like, throwing Jay under a bus is still being a nice guy. Of like, I think he needs some like someone to like care for him right now.
You know that he's coming about that with him being a nice guy and meaning in the right way. But I also think that it isn't given enough credit for how funny it is, because sure, he means it the right way, but I could see so many other people just using that as an insult of being like, yeah, your man needs some emotional support. Like that's
no, and I'm sure Jay did take it as an insult. But like Michelle is seeing these numbers aren't functional right now. Like this next portion of the game, because they know Conquest is now coming, is
math isn't mathing.
It's 9. They called 9v5, which it's more than 5, because I don't know if they are still including Raven in that mix. Because it's like you have Kylan, Horacio, Nerys, Zara, Olivia, Raven. So that's already 6. So of the 15 people there, I think they just forgot to say, because Mariah said like 9v5 or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's really 9v6. It should be 9v7, because James should be siding with this other group. Well, and then you should make it 8-7, because Ed should be also siding with this other group.
Well, we've already determined that most of these people aren't good at math, so numbers are hard.
But there's still a majority. And Jay has this philosophy throughout the episode also that he's more upset with Nerys and Olivia because they're just being used. They're just being used by Kylan. I'm like, well, what were they doing under you?
They're being Kylan's tool and not mine, is essentially what he's saying, which is disrespectful on a different level. But
it's the full Tyler mode. Like, Kylan stole my toy, and now that he stole the toy, I never even liked that toy. You didn't have it. It was garbage.
Which is funny about it, because going back 2 episodes ago, where Jay's throwing a temper tantrum because they're not doing what they wanted, and he flashed to Horacio and Kylan, telling Nerys point blank, don't do this if it's going to ruin your game, showing that they're not using her. They truly are putting her best.
This episode too.
Yeah, truly telling it, like, put your best interests in front of ours, because you should be looking out for yourself.
Yeah. And we've touched this so long, so I'm just going to breeze through. Jay then confronts Nerys and Olivia again about the stalemate. Nerys claps back. She's like, I'm not going to take this shit. And I think Jay is such a coward because he refuses to look her in the face while Nerys is giving points. And then they walk out, Nerys and Olivia, and Michelle then starts clapping back at Jay.
Michelle doing it is the best part.
Jay tries saying that he's protecting all of them, and Michelle's like, are you fucking kidding me? Stop saying that. And he keeps saying, it's like, no, stop fucking saying that. Why do you think you have so many friends in this game? Because it isn't because of you.
And if he really believed that, go back to the Michelle and Laurel elimination, where Jay's even shaking in his boots, being like, if Michelle goes out here, like, I could be in a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Because she's the lifeline. She's why Emmanuel's working alongside him, which, like, we see from the reunion that Emmanuel, Corey, and Asaf are still, I think, in decent terms with Jay, which tracks. Corey picked better friends. Anyway, and that's where Jay also is like, he's in this position where, like, he wants to be the puppet mastermind, but he's also wanting to play the victim. He's like, oh, now I'm the bad guy because I wanted things to go a certain way and they went against me. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. We briefly get Raven for what she's fighting for. And it sort of reminds me of Amanda with Amanda's father, where, like, Raven's father was going through chemo, and a big portion of her drive to win the money this season was to help pay for those procedures. Which, like,
it's incredibly noble. You know, it makes you feel for Raven. But as a show point of view, as soon as I saw that, Raven giving that confessional, my immediate thought was, shit, she's probably gone.
So this gets us to the daily. It's a night challenge. Welcome to Conquest. No more teammates. It's an individual game. Prize spots at 356,000. Q, Jay crying again over Asaf being mentioned. this is called Dark Tide, and in 3 rounds of 5 people, you're strapped to a speedboat, and the speedboat will then haul ass out of a bay to a course, then fling you into the water. You'll then get onto a paddleboard and paddle back to shore while picking up 3 colored rings, and have to make one of those rings onto a pole. Fastest person to get it done is the only person safe 100% from elimination. Last person is purged. Briefly, let's talk on great. I love that there's repercussions for coming in last. You now have given an incentive for people to not throw, and we can see, like, a lot of them say, like, who are the threats? Who are the threats? Who are the people that now, when your game is on the line every single daily, where if you fuck up, you're gone. No social politics can save you. Nothing. You go home.
Yeah, it's so one of the things I will point out was the challenge was a bit janky because Nerys talked about it, and it's part of the reason why Raven does end up going home. It could have been the difference. Was apparently if you were the first person at like your buoys to rip off a ring, there was a way that you could do it that kind of ripped off, like you were pulling the string that it almost released all of the rings. And so being on the water like that, Nerys said that hers wasn't where it was supposed to be. It was off to the side, and she was able to see it, where Raven was kind of at the station and her ring was, a football field away that she had to go paddle and get it. Because it wasn't staying stationary as it should have been.
Well, that's a shame. That's a shame if that's 100% why she goes out. But like we see her and Mariah both struggle at paddleboarding, which was very weird because I also would think paddleboarding would be something Mariah would be good at, just because like Mariah also like lives in Florida, so lives by the water. I know she's a lifter mainly, but like I'm sure they do a lot of paddleboarding down there. I've done paddleboarding once, and I wasn't in like great shape at the time. Very hard, but very manageable on like if you're doing it the way everyone else was doing it there, which is like if you're on your knees crouching and doing it, it's so much more manageable to keep it under control. So I like the challenge in theory because it's a little carny, but requires some skills that you will need for the final. And it got to show some people like that they may be able to do better than they thought. Like Nerys doesn't come in last in a water competition where
Michelle
that's her weakest part. So briefly, Horacio and Kylan once again show that they are top dogs in here, as well as Ed and as well as Emmanuel. Like those 4 really highlight themselves. I think Michelle once again underrates herself because she had so much fear of not doing well. She got second in her heat. Only person who did better than her was Kylan. And I think she can do better. Like I do worry that she could be a purge victim, but like have some more confidence in yourself, Michelle. Like you are better than what you give yourself credit for. But anyway, the winners were Horacio, Kylan, and Ed. Ed wins overall, so Ed is safe. And you even hear Jay say it during this: is he sees Ed as the biggest threat in the final, but it doesn't matter because Horacio and Kylan are why Asaf's gone, so we're going to keep targeting them. And you have no idea what's waiting for you, Horacio. Kind of like, they do. Stop. That's not even good TV. Like you just sound dumb at this point. But really, it comes down to the 3 people I sort of assumed would be at the bottom, and that was Raven, Mariah, and Berna. Like I see Berna getting purged. Like,
Berna, she hasn't had a good showing this season.
No,
it's been
like in the competitions
bad.
she hasn't been able to really showcase. But unfortunately, this is where we see Raven go, and it was hard seeing her go. Like I was sad about that. One, because I'm rooting for these underdogs, and her going really hurts them. Because she was a strong competitor. This just wasn't her night, and unfortunately, she goes. But I agree, we are seeing her again. I think the challenge production fell in love with her this season.
Agree.
So, Raven, 2 claps for you. Very happy to have you on the show. You're one of the standouts from this season. I put the full stamp on. We are seeing her again. She has challenge mainstay written on her.
Yeah, she does. And so getting into... I'm really just so... At first, I was excited because I'm like, oh, we have the dual type style of picking. Like,
I saw your tweet about this.
yeah, it
So
was so.
talk about that, because then we'll actually go into the chain of it all.
So I enjoy. It's not something I want to see every season, but I enjoy because we first saw it in the Duel 1, and then it was the Duel 2, where you pick one person, they pick another down the line, and whoever's left is going into elimination. What I didn't like about it, because it's how they had it in the Duel 2, is I want the Duel 1 style. Because the Duel 2, they did the same thing as they did here, where they went back to the house. They kind of like deliberated, because there it was a pair of winners, and they would pick and go down the line, and they could sort of form out the strategy just as you see that happens here. If you're going to go this style of picking, I think you need to do it as they did it in the Duel 1, where it's as soon as the elimination's over, that's where you're starting it. And not only do I think it's better because you can't form this perfect strategy, but you see people panic, people make mistakes, not thinking, and that's where you're going to see not a perfect plan play out. Which, if you're making a TV show, why would you want to give them time to form the perfect plan? Put them right on the spot, right then and there. And if they don't have the plan figured out, well, that's on them. And let's see a little chaos that way. So that was my biggest complaint with it.
I agree. I think they're like, at least for the first vote, that's where that could potentially happen. I ultimately don't think it would have. I think Ed still would have made the decisions that he made here. Maybe not the same person, but I think in real time we will have still gotten a similar result.
But could you see James screwing up and picking Zara if he isn't reinforced with
no, because I think Mariah will have just shouted there.
But was Mariah smart enough to figure out what the plan would have been there without being told herself? I'm not saying that she wouldn't be able to.
I think she would have wanted Zara vulnerable, because she did, like, while she was like working with Zara, she saw Zara as a huge threat, more so than Nerys. Which, again, these people, I think, are once again underestimating women. Like, they're underestimating Nerys and Olivia, I think, hardcore. But it's really only because they're so focused and blinded by Horacio and Kyland and their existence in the game that they're discrediting the field. That they're like, if Horacio and Kyland are the biggest threats, I'm being petty and want a vendetta against them for Asaf, praise Asaf. And that's where it goes. But like the real turn, like you said, the main points after this are Nerys and Olivia sort of reforming their bond. Like, Nerys is like, I know what my brother told me, but like Olivia's still showing to me that she's being a good friend, a good ally. She's sticking with me, which we'll see what happens in episode 16 when we see Nerys saying, I'll pop you in the mouth. And then it cuts to Olivia.
Well, it goes towards the eliminate. I doubt we'll highlight it. So now's as good a time as any to bring it up. But you could see the tea leaves there of Olivia saying, like, ooh, like maybe I made a mistake not ingratiating myself back with the Jay Michelle alliance, which is showing us everything that I think she's gonna make the turn back, and Nerys isn't.
Okay,
which is where I think that conflict's coming.
But if that's why Nerys folds on her friendship, then you know what? People don't need to be friends with everybody. I'm not going to be in a hizzy about it, because that'll give us good TV whenever they're on the same season again. But I'm just such an Olivia stan that I'm going to side with her. In this episode, though, I felt like she was saying that, and I felt like it could be taken both ways. Like, it be taken the way that you said it, but I also feel like she felt like, I feel like I made the wrong decisions coming into the game of siding with Jay. But it could also be twofold of like, oh, well, if I want to survive, because I just saw the repercussions of if I go against Jay, now I'm vulnerable to be put in when I've been relatively safe up to this point. And now it's so close to the final, I can't jeopardize my chance to get my redemption in a final if I can't get there, because I made this choice of siding with my better friends and allies and go back to Jay and Michelle.
Yeah, but, like I could be wrong, but my thought for that is more of just like, we know the beginning where we're at now, and we know the ending where the two of them are no longer friends. So that's me just trying to connect the dots of what's that middle part to get there. And because it could even be as simple as just not only is Olivia going back to that side, but if she makes some type of lie to Nerys saying, oh no, like I'll definitely pick you, and then they kick to Olivia early on in the picking process, and she goes a different way and ends up getting screwed going into elimination. Could be as simple as that as
Right.
well.
So because they have time to plan, this goes with what you were saying. Michelle's like, we need to make sure all of our T's and I's are crossed and dotted. That we can't have anything go off board, which you can plainly tell by how the chain goes. Because while Ed should be considering both sides here, he's not, because he wants to pick the path of least waves. There's a side that has more numbers, and yes, they betrayed him, but also he doesn't feel like the other side was like saving him. They were just going after Emmanuel, which is a fair read. That's a very fair read from Ed's part. But you also have to consider the Zara and Nerys side of it, where it's like, well, okay, you get out Horacio and Kylan. Who are they going after next? Are they going after me? Or are they going after you, Mr. Self-proclaimed best challenger in the house?
I get all the frustration with Ed. I don't come down on him too much. Like, sure, for what all of us are rooting for is we want to see them make that switch so the power structure finally changes in this game. But if you're just thinking it from Ed's point of view, he knows where he stands with that alliance, but also jumping ship, he's going to be at the bottom of that too. So I think it's more of just, why make this big change? It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. Like, I think if he thinks he can win and is in a good enough spot, maybe he can at least save off going into a few eliminations.
Right, because like you have this as an example where the other heats were won by Horacio and Kylan. So in a world where Horacio and Kylan aren't there, he's only really, in his mind, he's only competing against Emmanuel in more times than none.
Well, and I was going to say, not only that, but if you're thinking of the voting picking process, with how clear Michelle and Jay's of the world are really like etching that line in, you think, okay, even if Kylan, Horacio, Nerys, Olivia, someone like that wins the challenge, when they have to kick it to the other side, they're not going to be quick to be like, oh yeah, Jay or Michelle, where Ed's still low enough down on their kind of how they're viewing the list that you could see him being the person that they kick it to start off the other side, so that he still stays safe that way, because Ed isn't their main target.
Yep. So other point of note is, in this plan to get Nerys to be the last person picked so that she has to choose between her best friend Olivia and her boyfriend Horacio, which in future seasons would not be a hard decision for Nerys. It requires James to be the last person. And I feel like that was such a mental mistake on them, where because here's the safety chain. We get there, TJ arrives, they do the chain, and it goes Ed, Emmanuel, Berna, Colleen, which 100% makes sense, because I think Olivia and Michelle, or not Olivia, Michelle and Jay want these middle people, the Berna and Colleen, like the bottom feeders, to still feel like they're an integral part. Corey, an integral part. So you have them picked earlier than you. Like, you allow yourself to be closer to the end, because it like allows them to feel like, see, they truly value me. They made sure I wasn't even close to the end. But then they have Jay pick Mariah to Mariah pick James, where you should have, to avoid any type of conflict and assure there wasn't any silly business with James potentially picking Zara, which he wasn't going to, because in my notes, as I say, he's just simping for Mariah, and Mariah's his brain. Doesn't matter if he calls someone his literal sister in the game. They should have had Jay pick James, because then it very clearly James would always pick Mariah.
Yeah.
It'd just be like, Mariah's the only reason why I'm still in this game, so Mariah. And then Mariah can pick Nerys.
I think I completely get what you're saying. I think at this point, you completely know that Mariah's hand is shoved up James' ass and moving his mouth. And so it's his mouth moving.
You see the fingers when his mouth opens.
But it's Mariah's voice that comes out when he speaks.
Yeah. So Nerys has to make the decision, and Horacio, they focus on Horacio, but I'm sure Kylan was also like, yeah, save one of the girls. Save one of the girls. So she saves Olivia. So it's Horacio, Kylan, and Zara. Zara now wrote in her journal that she's blocking James because James is just Mariah's fourth chihuahua.
I just wish that she would have had this conversation with him in person and lit him up rather than waiting till the elimination.
No, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I love Zara. Zara's the type of person where it's like, does she have a lot of drama? No, but like, she's such a good competitor that I don't care that she doesn't have a lot of drama. It's just like a lovely person.
She's kind of like she's a better physical competitor of like a Huey.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
she's just really like light, bubbly, like just a good person.
Yeah. So yeah, everyone hates Jay. But as we said earlier, Jay's not playing with an emotion, and he's definitely not the victim. But he's also the victim.
I mean, he did make this moment. Like, you can hate on him as much as you want.
No, he made a active villain decision, and you even have his own allies being like, "This is very skeezy and slimy of him to do to an outside friend, but it's not me." So
because it would have been really easy to say, okay, have them pick Olivia, and then Olivia still would have picked Nerys at that point.
Yeah. So we're now at the elimination, which another thing I like is that it's in private. No help, which you could have done that for the champions as well. Like you could have had the decision made and then kicked everyone out of the elimination.
It's fresh meat style.
Again, this proves out mainly my theory, but you agreed with me. The last time we were here was they wanted champions to fail. Yeah. They wanted to have as many people at the end game so that they could do this, eliminate 2 people in a round. Purge,
you don't know how many
purge, elimination.
Well, you can also do it with that is that you're not realizing you send 3 people, whoever. You're not saying that 2 people are always going to come back.
Right.
This depending upon how many episodes you could get 2 people out. But no, I liked it too because we had a little bit of callback for the duel, which Marine, I see you in the comments. It wasn't exactly like the duel, but just it's the same principle.
It's the same principle.
It's the same principle. Yeah. So you got a callback of the duel there and a callback of the Fresh Meat series by having it done in secret, which I love because, hey, that makes my callbacks easier. I don't have to think extra hard for them. So perfect.
Yeah, but Derrick Henry isn't in those seasons.
This wasn't going to be about Derrick Henry, you know? Maybe
I had to bring him up.
Sorry. Maybe was it Jen Garcia? But I don't have a Derrick Henry one.
Anyway,
this episode.
So this is the first Conquest elimination. It's a race. There's no title. There's no title for the elimination. It's a race. You go, you race to this one area, and then from that area, there's 3 like little obstacle courses for you to go through to get to a puzzle. And then you have to complete each puzzle to grab a flag, come back through the obstacle, plant your flag. First 2 people to get all 3 of their flags planted in to their station, stay, last person goes. So the 3 puzzles that we have were you had to go over a wall and then solve a Sudoku puzzle, and all of Challenge USA started quaking seeing that in real time. But they're like, hey, at least it's not cold.
The Danny McRae Memorial Challenge.
Yeah. The second one was crawling through a net with mud underneath. And that one the
where you were crawling underneath the net. That was the one where you were sorting the blocks, like with the colors.
Sorting the blocks into all the color columns. We saw that in All Stars, or one of the All Star seasons eliminations. I believe Derek. It was Derek and someone else was in that one. And then the last one was a moving balance beam, which those are brutal. Like all of them doing that, credit to you. To then go to like a giant 3-part wheel where you had to get 6 3-letter body parts, which I think was the easiest one of the 3. And
so I feel like that you're just thinking of what are the 3-legged parts? Are the letters here to make it work?
So Kylan and Horacio, in my mind, made the right decision of going to the hardest one first, which was the Sudoku.
And just the wall, because that's going to be harder to do, more effort, more exhausted you are.
Yeah, get that effort done early. Like I would have done, I think, the path that they did. So wall, balance beam, then net.
I think that's the right order.
But Zara strides away from that because she's like, well, I'm dyslexic and I'm not good at math. But I think the dyslexia part will be less of a hindrance. So let me try to get through those 2 puzzles quick. And then hopefully that gives me enough time to do the last one. So not her main issue. She was never going to win at this once she got to the Sudoku, unfortunately. But she also had the brief time slip because she had muddy shoes on and couldn't climb the rope. But talk about a challenge champion pulling like a Jordan, throwing the shoes off and finding a way to get over that wall, being such a small person as well. It was like, you can't deny that Zara does not have heart. Like, she has a shit ton of heart and grit. And I can't wait to see her on a future season.
And you can tell just like how much of a great person she is. And I take that going based just off of TJ, because when TJ's kind of like really motivated,
he's enamored with those 3.
He loves them.
He loves them like children, like his own like challenge children at this point.
I'm surprised he didn't send them all back. Like, shh, it'll just be our secret. Like he's just like the grandpa being like, shh, it's just our secret. Like, don't tell anyone.
But she loses. And partially Horacio and Kylan sort of had an unspoken, we love Zara, but we think our side could have better opportunities if we both are the ones that go back. So they sort of do all 3 parts semi together, like not helping each other for the most part, maybe a little bit on the second puzzle, but they sort of work hand in hand. Horacio wins outright, and then Kylan a close second. But like you said, TJ loves them. TJ loves these 3. He's devastated to see Zara go, but knows that she's like the definition of challenger. That's high praise. That's like beyond what he usually says for people. So we will see Zara back as long as she wants to be back, and I feel like she does because she loves competition.
I don't think she needs to be back for like a season 40 that they want to blow out, but like 41, perfect. Bring her back.
Yeah.
Even hell, Challenge USA. I get she's from UK. Bring her over. Who cares?
But when have we ever seen TJ then go to 2 people? He goes to Kylan and Horacio, like, I don't want to see you 2 competing 1v1 again and until it's in the final. So win dailies and make sure I don't see both of you back here.
I think the last time that he was rooting for a competitor this much was Kara and Fresh Meat, where she kept pulling the kill card over and over again. I think that's the last time where he was obviously different phrasing and wording, but was outwardly just so much praise for someone on the show.
Like, I think he sees what we see.
Absolutely.
And these are 3 people that are mainstays now. Like, I know you had some reservations about Horacio earlier in the season of like, is he just a competitor and nothing else? But I think we're seeing now more from him. And agreed. I see the potential. Like, I personally rank Kylan over him, but Horacio, the gap is not as big anymore.
I see. So it's not comparing them as, characters, but I see Kylan, he can move. He is showing that he can be that main stage, where I feel like Horacio is more of
a Leroy.
I wasn't, because Leroy did it so many seasons in a row, but I was thinking someone like a Devin or even an Amanda, where you're not going to see him every season, but they're going to be a main fixture and being there every other, or they'll do, 4 of 6, something like that. But they're not, we need them every season.
When I say Leroy, I mean more as like, he's a great number 2 to somebody.
Yes, absolutely.
Like if I'm not comparing them as characters or people. Like,
are you going back to the bananas and Leroy?
Kylan's the bananas to Horacio being the Leroy. Like in the same way of like Kylan's the brains of the operation. Not saying Horacio and Leroy don't have those brains, because we've seen them work when they need to. But like Kylan's the head. And then if there's an elimination, Leroy was the gunner. Leroy was the assassin in an elimination against people. Horazio's in a similar belt. Like, Horacio still has not lost an elimination.
He's the fourth person, and I missed it. I forget who the other three are. I know it's Wes and two others,
It's
but the fourth
Brad
person, Brad and
and
Laurel.
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 Great company to be in.
To have a 6-0 stretch in eliminations.
And
well,
I think
sorry,
it's
and
specifically, I think
Nelson
that's
as well.
specifically where you're competing like on your own. The multi-person becomes a little more iffy, but like he hasn't lost a head-to-head elimination.
Nope.
So good on him. But that wraps up these 2 episodes. This was a loaded podcast. I'm surprised we were able to keep it under an hour 45. But thank you all for following along. We will get back to our regular cadence of 1 episode weekly, starting with this next episode for episode 16. So, Dan, do you want to tell the viewers what's coming up?
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff going on right now at the Reality After Show. Johnny Fairplay is going back in time, and he's rewatching his first season of Survivor Pearl Islands. He's doing that with stand-up comedian Wayne Memmott and Jen Hoffman. Each week, they're recapping an episode. They're generally doing that Monday or Tuesday, as well as what's one of the biggest buzz out in reality TV world right now, which is The Traitors. Johnny's covering The Traitors every week with Rachel Riley from Big Brother and Traitors Season 1, as well as Jen Hoffman. And so far, for each of the past 2 weeks, he has brought in heavy hitters as guests. For week 1, he had Trishelle, and this past week he had Sandra. So you can keep catching that. The coverage for that is coming same time again, Monday or Tuesday. Of course, Alex and I are here for the challenge, and it's only going to get busier because starting this coming week, we have Australian Survivor coming back. And so this is the first week. I don't know time or schedule yet, but as always, the past few seasons, we will be doing a weekly coverage of Australian Survivor as well. And then unfortunately, not for the fans, but for Alex and I specifically, we're only a few weeks away from Survivor 46 coming back as well. So this is probably the time of the year where you're going to see more podcasts than ever before on the Reality After Show. And as always, the best way to support the podcast is become a patron at realitypatron.com. That gets you access to the secret Facebook group, the Q&A, which is Johnny and Matt's favorite podcast to do every week, where you can ask them anything and everything, and I mean anything, and they will answer it. And so that comes out. So try it for a month. If you don't like it, Johnny will send your money back. We don't hold anyone hostage. I know we appreciate everyone tuning into this every week. It's been amazing. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to wherever you get your podcast at, rate and review us 5 stars. Please, it helps us out a tremendous deal. We do this all for you guys. So just take, 5 seconds for us. That's all we're asking for. But we appreciate and love you so much. Like I said, Alex and I will be back next week to keep going with the challenge, because there may be all these shows that are coming in and out, weaving, back and forth. The challenge is not one of them. Alex and I have done, I don't know, 100 podcasts of the challenge in the past 2 years. So it's been a lot. It's been a lot.
So don't quit on us. We will still be here. As TJ would always say, he expects to see us in the future, and you should too. Have a good weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
See y'all. Have a good week.